Hi golfers, Nick here from Nick Taylor Golf. It's Friday, so welcome to another lesson on golf tips. This week on golf tips, I'm going to talk about the forearm rotation in the golf swing. So last week I talked about the wrist hinge. So if you haven't seen that video, please check it out. I'm going to put the link in the description here below. But after that video, I had a question from Gem777 on YouTube asking me about the forearm rotation in the golf swing. So I'm going to try and sort of cover that today. I did mention last week that we're just going to focus on the wrist hinge, so today we're just going to sort of try and cover the forearm rotation, but there'll be some links back to the wrist hinge as well. I've got a training aid with me. I mentioned last week about the Tour Striker Smart Ball, which I use a lot in my lessons, and I'll explain that when I get to it. So first of all, in the golf swing you have the wrist hinge, which we talked about last week, but also you have the sort of forearm rotation, and that helps sort of set the club on plane. It keeps it in the right arc in the golf swing. So if I take my setup here, as I swing back, if I was to rotate my arms with no wrist hinge, the club would get way inside at this point and it would be very flat in the backswing. Conversely, if I didn't rotate my forearms but just hinge the wrist, you would see how the sort of shaft gets quite steep at this point. So there's certain checkpoints in the golf swing. I think it's more important in the downswing, those checkpoints, but there are some checkpoints throughout the course of the swing. So by the time my club gets to position 2, parallel to the ground in the backswing, you can see how I talked about last week about how the knee flex changes, the shoulder comes downwards, the hands move in and upwards. So by a combination of my hinge, the hinge and the wrists, and the way I move my body, that club starts to ascend. By this point here, we should ideally see sort of the club roughly in line with the hands at this point. Like I said to you, if you roll the wrist too much with no wrist hinge, you'll see the club getting way inside and very flat at the top of the backswing. So as we go back, there's a combination of hinge and forearm rotation as well. So by the time we get to sort of this position here, where the club shaft, or the left arm, sorry, is at position 3, P3, parallel to the ground, you'll start to see how the hands have moved in, but now you can start to see how the club at this point is roughly going through my bicep here. If I didn't have any forearm rotation, it would be very steep at that point. Okay, so you're just recognizing at that point that's where we're looking to get to. And it's the same on the downswing as well. So if I swing up to the top, as I start down, by the time you get to left arm parallel position 5, you should again see sort of the shaft going through the bicep. Again, if you rotate the forearms too much, too quickly on the downswing, you see that shaft get too steep. And by this point, that club's sort of not anywhere in a good position to hit the golf ball to any sort of degree of power, and you're probably going to sort of swing across the golf ball. You're going to probably hit pull hooks and slices from that position. So downswing, we're looking for that checkpoint with the shaft going through the bicep. Now if you've got someone that rotates the forearms too much, and I hear this quite a lot, to try and draw the golf ball, golfers will try and sort of rotate the forearms to sort of try and draw the golf ball, and I think you can do that too much in the golf swing, because if I swing to the top and get to a pretty good position and then I start to rotate too much too early, see how the club sort of tips out in front of me, the club gets quite steep at this point. We still want that club to be sort of tracing an arc into the back of the golf ball, so it hits it slightly from the inside, and if you start to rotate the forearms too much, that club will start to sort of tip over. So we want to try and minimise how much rotation in the downswing. It will rotate, the left arm does rotate as you swing through, but you don't want it to happen too quickly. So a really good sort of training aid to help you get the feeling of the forearm rotation and the wrist hinge is to grab a ball like this. This is the Tour Striker Smart Ball. So if you put it between the forearms, just below the elbows here, look from this angle. Okay, so the idea of this Tour Striker Smart Ball is to try and keep your elbows the same distance apart throughout the course of the swing. And if you do it correctly, you should start to feel the wrist hinging, a slight forearm rotation as I go back, and the same on the downswing. You can still, we talked last week about how the wrist still hinge as you start down. And one of the biggest faults I see is golfers that don't hinge their wrist properly. As they go back, the arms start to bend to get that club round, and then causes a lot of problems. So we want to try and keep a good structure to the whole swing, and as we hit through, it's quite good to hit golf balls with, because as you hit through you can see how keeping the structure between my arms, keeping the elbows the same distance apart as I go through, this is quite key. So this will really give you the feeling of hinging and getting the right forearm rotation in the swing. So I think the important thing is there is some degree of forearm rotation as you go back, but as you start down, you don't want to be rotating those forearms too quickly, because if you do, you're going to start to get that club coming from the outside. So the best thing to do is to video your golf swing and to check these different positions. Try, if you can use a mirror. If you can't video your swing, use a mirror, check these positions in the golf swing, but it's good to get some sort of feedback when you're hitting golf shots. You need to be able to see what you're doing to be able to sort of correct it. So they're the key positions that you're looking for. Through the golf ball, you'll see how the left arm will rotate through as it goes through. So it rotates in the backswing and the follow through, but the amount it does is quite important. You don't want too much in the downswing or too much in the backswing, but you do need some degree of forearm rotation. It's a power source in the golf swing, and it helps get that club into the right plane. So if you can get hold of one of these, is really good. I've done a video on this, I'll link it again in the description below, talking about how to use it and sort of the benefits of using this ball. But I use it quite a lot, just keeps that structure in the swing, keep the elbows the same distance apart. I think that's so key. So Jem, I hope that's sort of cleared up your question there. If you've got any more comments, post them in the box below. And golfers out there, if there's any other videos you want me to cover, anything in particular on the golf swing, I'll try and do that in the future. But in the meantime, if you can, please like the video, that really helps me. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel, absolutely free, plenty of content to come. And you can follow me on my other social media platforms, such as Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. When I couldn't even lend a hand.